Hello, welcome back to Reads of an Apple. My name is Staci, and today I'm here to talk about the books that I read in the month of April. Yeah, it was quite a few. There were a couple of readathons that went on during the month. There was one that lasted all month called Fantasy-a-thon. I didn't pick up, there were only a couple of books that I picked up specifically for the readathon. And I picked up quite a few more fantasies than I typically do, although I read a lot of fantasy romance anyway. Oh my gosh. Cheese has decided that this is her new scratching post. Excuse you. But yeah, so let's just get into it. Oh, but the Fantasy-a-thon. I did do a TBR video for it, but I didn't do anything really dedicated towards it because I just tried to apply most of the books that I read to the prompts that were there. Also, during the month was the Magical Readathon. I did do one short dedicated vlog for the 24-hour all-nighter reading sprint situation, so I'll link that vlog up above. But yeah, otherwise, let's just get into it. There were a couple shorter readathons, but I'll talk about those when we come to that. So we'll do stats first and go from there. So I read a total of 25 books for 6,872 pages. I averaged 1.6 days per book, which is pretty good for me. I feel like it's a little longer than normal, but it's still under 2 days, which is good. The average page count was 274.88, so a little smaller, but that's thanks to a readathon that happened at the end of the month. Then as for page breakdowns, I read 4 books that were under 100 pages, 5 in the 100s, 6 in the 200s, 8 in the 300s, 1 in the 500s, and 1 in the 700s. I read 7 new authors, and I had 4 rereads. For book clubs, readathons, and read-alongs, I specifically picked up 12 books for those situations. 6 of my books had diversity, so a little bit lower than normal. I read 1 standalone. So still, once again, almost all books I read are series books. 3 of the books were recommended to me. And then 8 of these books I previously owned. 1 I had pre-ordered or ordered around the time it came out or something like that. And then I added 8 books to my wish list. And then as for how I read the books, 3 of the books I read physically, 16 I read via ebook. I read 5 audiobooks, and then I had 1 combination. So I read the paperback while I listened to the audiobook. As for publishing, I read 17 independent indie published books. 2 of the books were from small publishers, and 6 were traditionally published. As for decades I read 11 that were published in the 2010s and 14 in the 2020s. So still a heavy 2020 reading decade for me. And then ages of book characters that I read for. 2 of them were YA. 8 of them were in their 20s. 3 of the books, they were in their 30s. And 11 of them were supernatural, immortal, long-lived type ages. As for where the books I've read were located, 4 of the books, I physically own them. 6 of them, I digitally own them. 9 of the books came from KU. 6 books came from Hoopla, and 1 book was from Libby. As for ratings, I had 11 5 stars, 4 4.5 stars, 7 4 stars, 2 3.5 stars, and 1 3-star. And my overall rating for the month was, or average rating was 4.44, which is my favorite number. And it's also funny because April's the 4th month. Then the final reading stats breakdown I keep track of is genres. So I read 7 contemporaries, 8 fantasies, 3 historicals, 6 paranormals, and only 1 sci-fi. And then I also break down the contemporaries. Hi. I've read 2 erotic contemporary romances, 1 office, 1 small town, 2 sports, and 1 just straight contemporary. So that is all of the stats that I keep track of. So let's just jump into books because we have 25 of them to talk about. So I started off the month reading Love You Wrong by Julia Kent. This is the 0.5 prequel in her Love You main series. And this is Rachel and Kel's relationship. And this specifically is, in the full series, each book is its own couple. However, this prequel novella is the first meeting of Rachel and Kel, and the first book in the series is a continuation of their romance, which is the second book I read in the month, which is Love You Right. So I'm going to kind of talk about them together. I gave the prequel 3 stars, partly on me because I didn't realize they were connected. I thought it was just a standalone prequel. And then I gave the full-size book number 1 4 stars. So in the prequel novella, Kel is in Washington, D.C. He got out of his small town in Maine, and he is out kind of doing his thing. He wants to do political, environmental, government work. He's all about good things for the earth. Can I help you? She just wants my attention. And this is co-workers. They're good friends. They both kind of have crushes on each other, but Rachel was dating her college sweetheart when they met, and then by the time she was done with that relationship and ready to move forward, Kel had started dating their boss. And a situation came out. Definitely he was frustrated, wouldn't listen to her explanation, and basically quit his job and quit Washington, D.C. and moved back home. So then book 2 starts several years later, and it is them re-meeting each other. He is now kind of co-running his parents' arborist business in the small town, and then he also has a side business that he's basically killing and disposing of toxic things like poison ivy type plants. So I don't know why I can't say the word right now, but we're just gonna move so I don't get stuck. So I enjoyed the second book. I gave it 4 stars though, because it took way too long for them to address the situation that happened in the prequel novella. It didn't happen till almost the very end of the book. That was our 3rd act breakup, is finally talking that over, when Rachel had kind of had enough of Kel, saying he was going to trust her, but then not actually trusting her and thinking the worst of her at every moment. So I did wish that was my big sticking point with it, is I did wish that would have been resolved earlier on in the book. But I still enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Then I picked up the audiobook for Butterfly Swords by Jeannie Lynn. This is the first book in her Tang Dynasty series. And I enjoyed this book. However, I gave it 3.5 stars. And that was because I wanted more from... I just got tired of our heroine and our hero pushing each other away. So this is Ainsley and I can't remember Ruin, or I can't remember how to say it. But he is a barbarian, so people who were nomadic tribes on the outskirts of China, a lot of them had non-Chinese descent. So if I remember correctly, I think his clan people were specifically from Turkey. But she is the princess of the current emperor, and she is on her way to an engaged marriage. And then she finds out that the person that the general of one of the armies, or of the army, one of the generals, was the reason behind her oldest, I think it was her oldest brother's killing in a battle, and that he was kind of more targeted toward, as like, so it was more murder than just like he died in battle situation. And so she kind of runs away, and she's trying to secretly make her way back to the main city, the imperial city, to, you know, let her father know what happened and get away from this marriage. And she ends up teaming up with our hero to kind of get there safely. And of course they fall in love, and I enjoyed it. I just kept getting frustrated because she kept pushing him away. And while I enjoyed a lot of the history in it, and it did feel very like the setting felt very historically accurate, I almost wish that Jeannie would have pulled back on that a little bit more, because it just felt, I don't know, because once we got to the HEA, I just didn't trust that either of them were going to push their partner away in the future. It just, so much white fanging, I guess you can call it. So I just didn't like that. There was enough other external angst and potential issues that could have been caused in the relationship without that it happened one too many times for me. And more than one was too many. So yeah. Then I picked up the ebook for Glitch by Briana Michaels, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. It was okay. I enjoyed it. It was definitely steamy. These are two people who are like in a first-person shooter gamer group online, and they've both kind of been attracted to each other based on like voice and personality, and then they finally meet, and it's super quick. I mean, it's that night they're together, like they get steamy very quickly, and they are getting it on all the time. I enjoyed this. I thought it was really well written. However, just a little too much steam for me. I wanted to feel the emotional development between them more. Just saying that they've already been crushing on each other and they like each other, it's still, even though they were very open with each other while gaming, it still quite isn't the same in person. So I did want to see a little bit more of that emotional depth between them. And it seemed like every answer to like any sort of situation that happened externally and internally, like when they finally were like trying to discuss it and figure things out and just have a deeper conversation, it always ended up in steamy times. So I wish that there were more, I guess, normal moments when dealing with different situations, but I still enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. For me, 3 stars isn't a bad rating. It's an okay rating. So this just didn't quite hit a 4-star for me. Then I picked up Vivienne Lorret's Winning Miss Wakefield. This is the second book in her Wallflower Wedding series, and I gave this 5 stars. If you've seen any of my videos where I talk about Vivienne Lorret, she is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, modern historical author outside of Lisa Kleypas, but Lisa Kleypas bridges that gap. I just love this. So this is Miss Wakefield. So this is Maribeth's book and Bane. We did see both of these people in the previous books in the series, and I just love them so much together. Maribeth is, so we kind of get a hint in the previous book that there was a situation going on where she was good friends with someone, childhood friends. I think he was friends with her brothers. But it was just kind of assumed by everybody that eventually Maribeth would marry this other dude. And then she gets a letter that basically is saying, I found my true love. He's a vicar's daughter. We're getting married and moving to Canada. And so she's pretty heartbroken. Her family has this like love situation where it's almost kind of fated mates-esque, where they just have a knowing when they meet who their partner is supposed to be. And she thought she had this knowing with this other person. So she's convinced that she's going to be a spinster. She's never going to find her true love. So her and, I can't remember if it's her aunts or if it's somebody else, but her reputation's kind of in the gutter because, you know, she was presumed to be engaged or just eventually to be matched with this gentleman for years, and all of a sudden he marries somebody else and leaves. So everyone kind of assumes that she was ruined. And to kind of restore her reputation, she's going to start a flirtation with a rake, and that will bring her ex-fiance back, supposedly, even though we got married to somebody else, and kind of get him jealous of her moving on with somebody else, and then they'll get back together and her reputation will be saved. But of course, you know how it works. She falls in love with Bane. And yeah, it's super cute. It's super cozy. I love Vivienne Lorret's writing. It just hits me right. And yeah, I'm excited. This is from her first series, and I have only one book left in her first trilogy. So I am excited to finish it, and I need more people to pick Vivienne Lorret up. I love her to pieces, and yeah, it's been fun going back and reading her first trilogy because this was a series that I hadn't read any books in. So hopefully I can finally finish this trilogy soon. Okay, so then moving on, I picked up the sixth book of the month, and that was the audiobook for Love Bites by Cynthia St. Aubin. This is the first book in her Tales from the Alpha Art Gallery series. I was needing an audiobook to pick up, and I was looking for something random, and then I remembered that Jesson and Juliette from Juliette Cross and Jesson from Jesson Reads Romance, they also have Smart Women Read Romance podcast, did an episode on this, and it sounded super cute. So I picked it up, and I found out it was set in Colorado, which is super fun. And yeah, so this is paranormal romance. Hannah and Mark's love story, I believe, takes place over the full 4 books of the series. And so I started it, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. My only one detractor was that we see her have sex with somebody else, but it doesn't feel like it's a love triangle. She just gets it on with somebody else, and it's kind of a big deal. Hannah's just been recently divorced. She's looking for a job, and Mark is a werewolf. So the humor in this was top notch. It was exactly my jam. Hannah is a cat mom. She has 3 cats, and it just hit all of the buttons I needed. It was just that one tiny little thing that I just had to dock it for. And then I continued on with paranormal. So the 7th book I picked up was Smash and Grab by Maas Maddox. This is the first book in her Relic series. These are dinosaur shifters, and this is Simon and Dalton. Simon is a paleontologist, and when some like mobster cartel type dude wants to steal the fossil that he recently discovered and is working on, and people come to kidnap the fossil and then end up also wanting to kidnap him because he's currently working on the fossil when they come to steal it. He ends up getting saved by Dalton, who is our dinosaur shifter. It is their romance, and I thought it was super cute. It was super fun. I gave it 4 stars for sure. I definitely enjoyed my time, and I definitely want to read more. And all of the dinosaur notes were just hit perfectly in this book. And Cheese agrees. Then I kind of went on a little mini Alessa Thorn binge, and I finally picked up Trash and Treasure. This is the first book in her Ironwood series. This is a spinoff of her Wrath of the Fae series, and this is Charlotte and Reeve. Charlotte is one of the Ironwood sisters, of which the eldest sister is the heroine in the final Wrath of the Fae series book. And I love this. Charlotte is paired with Reeve, who is one of the Dragonborn brothers. They are a magic, like, warlock wizard family. And Charlotte is the only witch and magic user in the Ironwood family. Everybody else is more, like, weapons based in their hunting skills. And this is kind of a second chance. They were kind of circling each other in college. And then she overhears him kind of expounding on her cons as a person, or defaults or defects as a person, and gets super hurt and kind of runs away and doesn't want to deal with him. And they get brought back together with some situations that happened in the Wrath of the Fae books, and it's their second chance. And I loved it. I love Alessa Thorn. I mean, she comes in as like a 4-star for me, and this was a 5-star. It gave me everything I wanted. I'm very excited to continue the series, and of course I did, because the 9th book I picked up was God Touched, which is the second book in Ironwood. This is Imogen's book, and this is her romance with Arwan, who is a death god. So, I mean, we got hints of their romance and what their situation previously. Imogen has always had this weird connection with death. She drowned and actually died when she was like 8 years old, and then was resuscitated and brought back to life. And since then, she's kind of towed the line, because she feels like she escaped death, and she knows that it's coming for her. And she just has this feeling death will be coming for her. So she lives life to the fullest. She kind of pushes it a little bit and is a little bit reckless at times. But she knew death was coming for her, because her, like, mate person, her fated love, is one of the gods of death. So, you know, I loved it. It was so much fun. And, you know, the heroines that Alessa Thorn writes, particularly in this series, and her Mercenaries and Magic series, are so kick-ass. And they're so much fun. Alessa Thorn is another one of my favorite authors. If you haven't read her, please read her. And yeah, these are great. I had to stop myself from binging the other 2 books in the series. Then the 10th book I picked up was another novella, and that was The Girl in the Hockey Jersey by Ainsley Booth. This is the 0.5 prequel novella for Off the Ice. The first book in the series is a continuation of their romance a couple books later. This is Harper and Kieran. Kieran is a hockey player, and he is currently on the Arizona team, which is pretty funny, because the real Arizona team is the Coyotes. So there's a coyote on the cover on her hockey jersey, which is funny. But they're in Buffalo, and she kind of has this weird love-hate relationship with hockey. And I'm definitely intrigued to learn why she has this weird relationship with hockey. But when she goes to the local hockey game, she likes to wear the away jerseys, just to be that person, I guess. And she ends up being invited randomly to a party that the players are having. And she runs into Kieran, and they end up kind of having a one-night stand situation. And then I know that the first book is them coming back together in a couple of years. So it's weird that I ended up kind of picking 2 books up like that. Just different circumstances, but the same kind of thing. The prequel novella is their first meeting, and then them coming together a couple years later. But this one specifically is a one-night stand, and we will see them come together later. So there's that. The 11th book I picked up was the third book in Tracy Lauren's Parish Woods series. This is Captured by the Orc King. And I gave this one 3.5 stars, which was very disappointing to me. The first two books I gave 5 stars. I loved. I bought this in paperback and then started reading it on KU before the paperback arrived. And I was just so disappointed because the hero and heroine, that you see them meet pretty early on in the book. And then we go through a lot of time of them being separated, but they don't like officially meet until like 60-70% in. So I was pretty disappointed with that. And then their romance was just really rushed. We get a lot of not necessarily rehashing, but just seeing Thorn's POV from the situations that happened during the second book when Thorn is reunited with his brother and his brother's mate, which we see in the previous book. And then it felt like that part didn't bother me as much. Except I wish that he would have run into the heroine again, maybe during that point. What also kind of felt weird is that there were 2 other POVs besides our main 2 people. The, undying magic queen that Thorn is kind of being controlled by. And then one of the witches that is kind of traveling along with the orc army as they're raising the countryside. And who ends up dying anyway, so whatever, which is kind of a spoiler, but I just didn't like that we got her POV as much as we did, and I was okay at first with the Evil Queen's POV, but then we got her one too many times, or her POV lasted a lot longer when we were in it than I would have hoped for. I did, when I get to the end of the book, there is an author's note that Tracy Lauren had written this book, and then her computer crashed and she lost her manuscript, and she just felt so defeated that she didn't want to rewrite the same story that she did, so she wrote something new. But that there are similar instances that happened in both versions. So I don't know if that's why it didn't quite hit for me, but I still enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. There were just a couple little things that added up too much to kind of take my enjoyment away from it. But I will still read the 4th book, and I'm excited to see what happens. Okay, then book 12 I picked up was Up in the Air by Dr. Rebecca Sharp. She is a dentist, so she is a doctor. And this is the first book in her Winter Games series. This is Channing and Wyatt. I saw this book in an Instagram ad because it said, if you enjoyed this Disney movie, read this book. And there were a couple different, I think it had like 4 different Disney movies slide. And this book was the rec for the Motocross Disney movie, which was my favorite, Disney movie. The Disney kids movies situations, and this kind of ish follows the same situation. So Channing's brother injured himself. This whole book is set up in Aspen, I think, Colorado, so another Colorado-based book, but a lot of them are snowboarders in this book. And so Channing's brother got injured, and he has his place in the Winter X Games, and she decides, since she didn't make it because she ended up having a situation happen during her previous cycle of competitions, that she's going to take her brother's place because he got in there and she can snowboard just as good as him. And then she runs into Wyatt, who's kind of the king of snowboard at the time. If he competes in a competition, he wins it. And it is their romance. And I had so much fun with this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. Just a couple little nitpicky things here and there. And yeah, I go in depth with it in one of my weekly vlogs, and I just really, really enjoyed it. And I'm excited to read more in this series. And yeah, so if you also enjoyed the Motocross Disney TV movie, definitely check out this book because it did hit the notes. Then the 13th book I read, it was a reread for me, and that was A Court of Wings and Ruin. I reread this book via the graphic audio that was available on Hoopla. And I mean, still 5 stars. Court of Wings and Ruin. I'm not going to go too much into it because it was a reread for me. But I mean, the graphic audios are just amazing. And I didn't read, when I read this the first time, the only first 2 parts of the graphic audio were out. But I didn't want to read the 2 parts and then read the third just by the book. So I waited until the third was out. And it was finally time to pick up it was finally time for me to pick it up because I don't have any more new Sarah J. Maas books to read because the SJM along is officially over. So I thought, why not reread? Because apparently I just need to read a SJM book a month now because that's what I've gotten used to for the past over 1 year. So I reread this one and it was great fun. Okay. Moving on. I know it's a lot. So the 14th book I read was Gilded Lily by Staci Hart. I read this via audiobook. This is the second book in her Bennett Brothers series. This is Lila and Cash's book. And Cash is, so this book is, as you could probably tell, gender bent. Jane Austen. So it is the Bennett family. So Cash is Caroline. So this is Caroline's book. Lila is a wedding planner and her sister Ivy works at the Bennett family's flower shop, and Cash is like their head gardener, and it is their romance because she's a wedding planner, and because her sister works there, she uses them for her flowers. She finally kind of ends up getting out of her current relationship that we see in the beginning of the book, and her and Cash kind of end up, it's one of those things where he's kind of liked her, but never made a move. And she is rebounding and hasn't had decent sex in a while. And so they end up kind of having this friends with benefits they do kind of say that they're exclusive and they're going to have this relationship, but they both kind of have put it in their head that it's a rebound, so it probably won't last. And then they both just kind of get stuck on that fact. But I gave it 4 stars. It was super fun. I was very excited to continue the series, and we'll see when I pick up book 3. Okay. Now this book I read the entirety of it during that 24-hour magical readathon vlog that I mentioned earlier. And that was Seduced by Selkie by Lauren Connolly, who I think I said in this vlog is a new author to me, but I have read her books before and I actually own a couple of her books. So I don't know why I thought she was a new to me author, but she's not. And I gave this book 5 stars. This is the first book in her Folk Haven series. I mean, we've got a Selkie and another paranormal person. Or I guess I considered this fantasy because I feel like more mythos type creatures are fantasy for me. But yeah, I gave it 5 stars. I super loved it. Check out that vlog if you want to see my full thoughts on that. Then I finally got around to starting my Stay a Spell reread. So I reread Wolf Gone Wild by Juliette Cross. This is Evie and Mateo's book. It's still 5 stars. I still love Evie. I still love Mateo and Alpha. And I think I myself connect most with, I feel like I am a combination of Evie, Clara, and Isadora. So, I love Wolf Gone Wild, and the nerddom in this it just makes my heart sing. So still 5 stars, still loved it. Then, of course, I had to pick up Don't Hex and Drive, which is Stay a Spell book number 2. This is Isadora. And Devraj books, still 5 stars, still love them to pieces. I just don't know what else to say outside of, if you haven't read Juliette Cross, she's another one of my favorite authors. Please read her books, and I highly, highly recommend Stay a Spell. And I am rereading the series because the final book in this comes out May 9th, of which I have the arc for, but I wanted to finish my reread of the series yet. So as of filming this, I still haven't gotten to the arc yet, but I'm almost there. Then I had to pick up the Ilona Andrews book for the month for the Ilona Andrews read along. We are currently working through Innkeeper Chronicles, and this month was book 4, Sweep of the Blade, and we change main characters in this. This is Maud and Arlen's book, and we see Maud go with Arlen back to his home planet, and kind of, she is admitted that she's in love with him, but she doesn't know if she wants to marry him after the way that her previous marriage ended. It was also with a vampire, and we just get her kind of assessing and finding her place in House of the Crier, and I loved it. 5 stars. It was great. I read this physically as well as listening to the graphic audio, and it just gave me everything I wanted. And I love Maud, and I love Maud's daughter Helen, and another offer. If you have not read Ilona Andrews, please read Ilona Andrews. They are the greatest. And I don't know what I'm going to do when we're done with this series, but I know we still have more Ilona Andrews books to get to, but 5 stars. I loved it to pieces. Then I picked up new release, day it came out, The Alice Curse by Megan Van Dyke. This is the 3rd book in her reimagined fairy tale series, and this is her Alice in Wonderland retelling. So this is Eliza and Finn, and Eliza is not direct descendant, but her family name is Carol. So she is related to the original Alice, and basically the eldest female, she's the only female heir in the line, becomes Alice, has to go to Wonderland and choose which court rules for the next little bit, red or white, and it is her turn, and her relationship is with Finn, who can shapeshift into the White Rabbit. I really love this. It was super fun. I gave this 4.5 stars though, and I feel like, because I myself am not a big Alice in Wonderland fan, I missed maybe a lot of the nuances or Easter eggs or nods to the original series. I've seen the Disney cartoon once a long time ago, wasn't a big fan of it when I was a kid. And then I did see the first Johnny Depp Alice in Wonderland, thought it was fine. I saw it when it came out in theaters way back when. And that's kind of all I remember about it. So I enjoyed it. I feel like it just didn't quite hit me as much as her other books, just because I don't know the fairy tale that it's retelling as much. Okay, so most of the last remaining books that we have to talk about, I read for the Novellathon, which ran from April 26th, I believe, to May 1st. So I did a dedicated reading vlog. I will pop it up above. And so I'll just kind of touch base really quickly on the books I read for that. The first book I read for that, the 20th book of the month, was Crybaby by Marina Vivancos. This was my one book of the month that wasn't a part of a series. I gave this 4 stars. It was Friends to Lovers. Yeah, super dirty, steamy, whatever you want to call it. It was super fun. Gave it 4 stars. And then the next 2 books I picked up for the Novellathon were prequel novellas 0.4 and 0.5 of The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This is in her Throne of Glass series, the prequel novellas. And I gave both of them 5 stars. So that's The Assassin in the Underworld and The Assassin in the Empire. The Assassin in the Underworld, we really see her come back. We see Selena come back from the Red Desert. And this is when her and Sam officially kind of start their romance or officially get together. And then The Assassin in the Empire is basically wrapping up and setting up everything that kind of leads to the first book, Throne of Glass. And I read this for the Novellathon, like I said, so check out the blog. But the biggest thing is now I really want to reread all of the series and not just the last couple books like I was thinking. So we'll see what happens there. Then I picked up The Marquess and I by Staci Reed. This is Willow and Alessa. This is the first book in her Forever Yours series. I gave this one 4.5 stars. This has a blind heroine. It made me cry. Good, in a good way, multiple times. And yeah, it was just, I love Staci Reed. So definitely check out my reading vlog for that. And then the final novella I picked up for the novella-thon in April, because I did pick up one in May as well, was For I Have Sinned by Dorinda Jones. This is the 1.5. This is more of a short story in the Charlie Davidson series. And this one was interesting because you're in the POV of someone who has passed, who is going to Charlie Davidson, who is a Grim Reaper, for help to pass over. And then the final book I read for the month was my reread of Witches Get Stitches, which is book 3 in the Stay a Spell series. Still 5 stars. Still loved it. Yeah, I just loved rereading the series. This is Violet and Nico's book, and I'm just going to kind of leave it at that because this is already 40 minutes long, and I just don't know what else to say outside of I love the series, and please read Juliette Cross. So there we have it, the 25 books I read in the month of April. I'm pretty excited. I read a lot of great books this month, and I had quite a few rereads, which is crazy because I don't think I had any rereads yet so far this month. And I usually reread a couple books a month, but I had a lot of fun. But I'm going to leave it at that. So thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to leave me a comment down below, let me know what your favorite book of April was, or if any of these sound interesting to you that you haven't read, or if you'd like to just leave me an emoji, leave me something purple in honor of Witches Get Stitches, which was my final book of the month. Don't forget to like and subscribe for any future videos that might come out, and I will see you all very soon.